that you're going to tackle least common multiple and greatest common factor. Actually, this video focuses just on greatest common factor. I do want to review least common multiple with you very quickly. If you didn't catch that video, it's up and loaded for you so that you can check that out and review a little bit. But what I want you to see and understand is that least common multiple, you want to focus on the word multiple. Multiple has to do with fact families, and it's the numbers that you would find on your multiplication chart. For example, when you'd say, like your multiples of 9, 9 times 1 is 9, 9 times 2 is 18, 9 times 3 is 27, 9 times 4 is 36, 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, everything in this row of 9s, those are all multiples of 9. They're all in the 9s fact family. So that is your biggest difference, is that they're the answers to your multiplication problems. And then the word least means it's the smallest number that you can find in the lists that are in common between both lists. So when you find a matching number in both lists, it still has to be the smallest one, because some lists, if you'll go back and watch on the video, some lists had 2 matching numbers, and because there were 2, you had to look at which one was the smaller amount. And so that's the big thing with least common multiple that I want you to remember. If you don't remember, we do some of it together on the video, so go back, check it out, and make sure that you know what you're doing with least common multiple. And I also want you to remember that least common multiples are used for when we're trying to find equivalent fractions or making orples. So those help us to find fractions that we can actually do our math with, because if your denominators are not the same and you need to do addition or subtraction, then you're going to be in a world of hurt, right? You've got one fraction is apples and one fraction is oranges, and you can't add apples and oranges together. You can't say I've got 3 apples and 2 oranges and say I've got 5 apples. It doesn't work like that. So make sure that you understand least common multiple, because that's going to make your fraction life easier. Now today we're going to talk about greatest common factor. And our greatest common factor is GCF. A lot of times we refer to it just as GCF, just to give it a shorter name. So greatest common factor. And I want you to concentrate on this F right here. And I know my snazzy math videos where I'm doing all the handwriting and the doodling, they're not super high tech, but you know what? When you write your notes, handwrite your notes and doodle on them, your brain remembers things better. So GCF stands for greatest common factor. And again, we're going to focus on this guy right here. Factor. Greatest common factor. That's kind of a weird square, huh? It's kind of hard to see. I'm just going to go ahead and finish it out. Greatest common factor. Now, the reason why we're focusing on factor is I want you to think of a factory, like a little factory that makes things and builds parts and pieces and bits and baubles, and when it all comes out off of the conveyor belt, they've made something fantastic, right? So here's our little factory chimney, and here's our smoke that leads right up to our factory, our F right here, so we can kind of remember what it's about. So our factory makes multiplication numbers, and it's all of the pieces that make up an answer to a multiplication product or multiplication problem. So what it is, it's the pieces and parts that make up the product. And the word product is an answer to a multiplication problem. So pieces and parts that make the product. So think of a factory. Like a factory. Thus the word factor. It's going to be important that you organize these lists when you're listing them. So organize them. Okay. Neatly, because you're going to get lost if you don't. And then you're also, if you're struggling a bit, you can try using a multiplication chart, but it's pretty tricky. You can try it. I don't know. I don't suggest it, but I'm going to put it on here. I tried using it, and I thought it was tricky, and I thought it was an easy way to miss some of the facts. This is one of the situations where you need to know your fact families because it's going to help you when you're looking for answers for your GCF. And the other thing I want you to know, it's a big one, we use this when we're simplifying fractions. That's what it's for. When we do LCM, we use LCM when we need to find a common denominator and we need to create equivalent fractions, or as I tell my kids, making ORPLs so that we can do the math. But LCM is for that. This is for simplifying fractions. In other words, making the numbers in the fraction as small as possible, which allows you to have the biggest portions possible. All right, so let's get started with GCF. We're going to do a little bit of practicing, and as we do it, you're going to see how I want you to organize the numbers so that you can keep track of things a little better. So the first thing is that usually they'll give you two numbers, or in the fraction you have two numbers that you usually have to deal with. Sometimes you have three if you get a little more complicated. Let's see if those markers will stay put. So the first thing is, I hope you could see that, the simplifying fractions. I'm afraid, did you see that? Let me put it up there. Let me review it real fast just in case you couldn't see it. So GCF, greatest common factor. I want you to think of pieces and parts that make the product that come out of the factory, and then organize those pieces and parts neatly. And then if you want to try a multiplication chart, I didn't put the word chart. If you want to try a multiplication chart, you can. I don't really recommend it, so I'm going to put kind of a meh face because I'm just not so sure about it. But we use it to simplify fractions. I'm sorry that you couldn't see all of that. Okay, so over here I'm going to put GCF so that we can see where our answers are going to be in this column all the way over here. Oh my goodness, Mrs. LaValle. There we go. And then I'm going to write this. I picked two colors that are really different. I picked a pink and an orange. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the GCF of 48 and 12. So there's my 48 and here's my 12. Ooh, that's a bright orange. Check it out. And we're going to write those numbers out. So the first thing, the easiest one, I always start with the easiest one. 1 times 48, and I'm going to put 48 all the way over here. 1 times 48 equals 48. 2 times, it'd be 24. So 2 and 24 would be 48. And then 3 and 16 would be 48. And then 4 and 12 make 48. 4 times 12. And there's not a 5 because whenever we do 5s, whenever we multiply by 5, everything ends in a 5 or a 0, and we're looking at 48, right? So that's not it. 6 and 8 make 48, and 7, nothing that a 7 can do. And then we're here at the 8. So it's okay to have this blank spot in the middle because you don't necessarily know how much space you're going to need, but at least you start here and you work your way in. Now let's do 12. 1, I don't think we're going to need it as big. Let's put 12 here under this other 12. 1 and 12, and then 2 and 6, and 3 times 4, and then nothing times 5, and then we're back here at 6. So here's our lists, right? This is how I organize them so I can kind of see them. But now we've got to find the biggest number that they have in common. So right now I see that this is in common. They both have 1s. They both have 2s. They both have 3s. They both have 4s. Wow. They both have 6s. And they both have 12s. But then that's where it stops. So our biggest number is right here. Okay? So our GCF is the biggest one in common. It's the 12. So I'm going to put 12 as the GCF between 48 and 12. Okay. Now again, I know you guys learned to do some of this stuff in 4th grade and maybe even 3rd grade, and you may not have been able to really grasp how it was applied when you did other things with it, but in 5th grade, it's going to be a big deal. It's going to be a huge deal, and you're really going to need to know them. So, and it's not something you necessarily memorize so much. Like you don't memorize that the GCF between these two numbers is 12. What you want to memorize is the facts that make up 48 and the facts that make up 12. Some of your common numbers. I mean, sometimes you're going to get a doozy of a number and you're going to have to really think about some things, but you can do this. You can do this. So let's do 15 and 25. Let's do our 15 first. So 1 and 15, I'm just going to go here. 1 and 15, 1 times 15 makes 15, 2 and nothing, right? Because 15 is an odd number, and anything you multiply by 2 has to be an even number. Then we know 3 and 5 make 15, and then 6 is an even number. 7, there's nothing times 7, because 7 times 2 is 14. 7 times 3 is 21. So, and then I think that's it. 8, 9, yep, that's it. And then we've got 25, right? So 1 times 25, 2 times nothing, because again, we have odd numbers, and if you have something to multiply by 2, it's always going to come out as an even number. 3 times 8 is 24, so that's about as close as we can get. 4 times 6 is 24, we can't get any closer. So 5 is our next number, and it's 5 times 5, so there we go. 5 times 5 equals 25. So very short list, but let's see what we have in common. We've got 1s in common, and we've got 5s in common, and that's it. So the biggest number that that's in common between the two lists would be 5. So our GCF between 15 and 25, or GCF for 15 and 25, is actually 5. Okay? And then we're going to do one more. We're going to do 9 and 12. And I've noticed that there's not a ton of hints and helps for GCF. Like there's a few things for LCM, but I think GCF is a little easier because of the fact family. So 9, let's do 9 first. So 1 times 9 is 9. And we know 3 times 3 is 9, and then that's it. That's a short list. And then we've got, can you see it? I'm trying to make sure you can see it. 12. So 1 times 12 is 12. 2 times 6 is 12. 3 times 4 is 12, and then that's it. We know that 5 has to end in a 5 or a 0. So that's what we've got. Now let's look and see what is common. 1 and 3, and that's it. So the biggest number that they have that they share is a 3. So our GCF for 9 and 12 is a 3. And that's pretty much how you do it. There's not much else to it. You just have to know what numbers make those products up. So again, let's review. When you're doing greatest common factor, you want to make sure you think of a factory and think of all the parts and pieces. These are the parts and pieces right here that make up the numbers, okay, that make up the product. These are the products. These are the answers. 1 times 48 is 48. 2 times 24 is 48. 3 times 16 is 48. So you want to make sure that you know those parts and pieces and then look at them like they're a factory and the product that they make up. And then you want to organize them neatly. You'll notice that I start here and I say 1 times 48 is 48. And then I do the 2 and what it's times. So 2 times 24, and then 3 times 16, and then 4 times 12, and then 6 times 8, and we work our way to the middle. And that really helps you to keep things in numerical order. So it helps you to make sure that you can see what number is the largest, what number is the smallest. And I apologize if you hear some noise. I think they're working on the air conditioner. And then it says you can try a multiplication chart, but notice my sign. I just don't know that it's going to work because you really just jump all over the place. And I tried to find some patterns, but I wasn't finding them. But the big thing I want you to remember is that when you have to simplify a fraction, this is what you use to help you simplify a fraction. You use GCF for simplifying, and then you use least common multiple for making equivalent fractions, or as we call them in my classroom, ORPLs. Remember, least common multiple is the smallest number you can find. Even though it's the same number in both lists, it has to be the smallest set because sometimes you'll have more than one pair. And it's fact families, so it's the product that you're looking at. So you're looking like if it was the fact family of the 3 fact family, it would be 3, 6, 9, 12, so on and so forth. Think of your multiplication chart and you just read down that row. That's where that multiplication chart comes in handy. So that's pretty much it. That's all I needed to share with you today. You can watch this video. You can take notes on it, color those notes, give them little clouds and doodles and arrows like I do, and it will totally help you remember what you're working on and help get those facts to stick. But that's all there is to LCM and GCF. It's just a matter of remembering which is which and when to use them. But that's going to be the next video. We're going to start adding and subtracting fractions in the video a little bit at a time, and you're going to be using LCM and GCF to finish things off or to get things started. So with that, have a great day, and thanks for watching.